I never think of a film when I write a book, never, absolutely not. In adaptation, one is faithful on the surface, but actually underneath that surface, one really does all sorts of things with what the original novel is. When it's finished, it might look like a thing of the original, but it really, I mean, I think for a fairly successful adaptation, it really has to change from within somehow. It has to have something completely different from the novel.
And also what Heaton does, if you read the book, it reads like a screenplay. It's like a dream for a filmmaker, you know?
Yeah, but that's because I've been going to your editing room a lot.
Yeah.
Before that, I didn't...
There have been many films.
Yeah, in between. So I knew, you know, I was cutting I knew how to cut scenes and how to juxtapose scenes. And I thought, oh, great, I can do this with a novel. And in fact, I wrote it in a linear way. You know, I wrote sort of long stretches of the 1923 story, long stretches of the 1975 story, and then, you know, kind of pasted them together so that juxtaposed that each one was a counterpoint to the other.
When you're writing and then you visualize, of course, you know, seeing palaces and all, but then finding something, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like destiny, that, you know, you are given the right location, no matter what. If you set out to do something, your direction will go in the other direction to sort of find the right place to do it. And then you are led to a place, and it happens because you wanted to have the right atmosphere. So somehow or the other you are led to it, you know.
This particular film certainly had sort of much grander scenes than I had envisioned. My palace in the book was a really rather sort of run-down place. It was called Katam, which in English means finished, the end. So this particular royal state was at its end, it was really finished. But of course on this, when it became a film, well, Jim wouldn't like to shoot in a state that's completely finished. He has to have these grand dinners, chandeliers.
No, but it was the most least of all the Maharaja's palaces. I mean, it was the really most broken down one.
Yeah, but not as broken down as I had envisaged.
One of the features of the novel is that the people in the 1975 story are in the same places and buildings and sometimes even rooms as the other people, the other characters in the earlier stories had been. So we had the same locations, but for two stories.
It was like a dream for an art director or production designer to sort of, you are shooting in the same location, a 1920s story, and then you are shooting the present day story in the same location. So the whole thing would change like magic, you know. So one day you're coming, you're finishing that story, the next day you are there on the set and it's a completely different
No,
set.
you would like to think it was like that, but it was not like that. Well, the way it was is that we would have to go off to some godforsaken scrubby bit of desert and shoot something that we didn't want to shoot, while they fixed up the set for the next bit.
You wasted my money.
Well, no, we saved you money.
No,
if we'd waited around while they painted and plastered and did all the rest of it, then you would have...
That's ridiculous. I thought that every last shot of heat and dust, you know, was my sweat and blood.
Well, that could be true, but...
But this one particularly, because they were both sitting in Delhi. One of the financiers had run away to Hong Kong, and the other one had gone to Latin America. So we had no money, nothing, and Ruth said, well, why do we have to do it? We can just sort of, you know, call it off, and everybody can go home. Well, we had already 40 people sitting there in Hyderabad, you know, waiting, and contracts were all done and signed. I said, no, this is not possible. We just have to forge ahead, that's it. So, you know, against all better judgment of theirs, you know, I had to sort of pull everything together. So now I realize that while I was sweating away, he was thinking of doing some non-consequential shots.
No, it would be like if we'd go to do a funeral pyre, for instance, that kind of thing. It's a lovely scene in the funeral pyre, and while they stenciled the walls in the, you know, the Nawab's palace.
We wanted always to go to Hyderabad to shoot there, and there were these grandest palaces there. You know, so
well, Hyderabad was the richest princely state in India, and the Nizam of Hyderabad for a long time was the richest man in the world, and it showed.
And then there was, of course, Faluknuma, which is a grand, really extraordinary, where you had a dinner for 200 people, you know, all chairs and china and everything. And I remember looking for a set of China to have it for 50 people. It was very difficult to find.
For the banquet scene.
And banquet scene.
Yeah, a set of 50 glasses and plates that were complete and not broken. Because by this time, you know, everything had just been sold, or, I mean, all these
they were there, but
places had been broken up, and
Which is how
the
it was
antique dealers had come and cleared out everything.
Which is what is originally in the novel. Everything had broken, sold.
And you know, the other thing is that we finished the story, the modern story, and then we did the period story. And then we wanted to do the scene where at the end of it, Julie Christie goes to the mountain to have her own child, you know. And she came back, and luckily the snow, the weather was, you know, it was supposed to be, you know, spring, but the snow had just come, you know. So the whole valley was full of snow, which made it even more interesting.
I always wanted to search out what happened to Olivia.
She was great to work with, and I think did a very interesting thing with the part. She had a kind of commonsensical intensity about her.
By giving, they're taking good karma for the next reincarnation.
So you're helping them to a better time in the next life by eating their food in this one.
You know, the sort of English common sense was there, but she was still on a mission which was not commonsensical at all.
All for love and that sort of thing.
Oh, I don't know.
What? Speak up.
Well,
I mean, we always wanted to work with her, right from time after we saw Dr. Zhivago, because we were invited to the premiere of Dr. Zhivago, and she was all there, you know, and I asked her for a dance, you know, and she, you know, she's born in India, and her parents own a tea plantation. So there was a kind of a thing about Julie Christie wanting to go to India and do something. So when our project came along and we approached her, and she really had read the book and liked it enormously and wanted to do it. And at the same time, Sidney Lumet had offered her a part with Paul Newman called The Verdict. So it was a conflicting thing, and she was being paid a lot of money for The Verdict, and she was debating with the thing, and she selected to do Heat and Dust, and came to India and made the film with us.
India changes people. Just in subtle ways.
And we just hope that there'll be something soon to work with again with her, because she's just so marvelous. And particularly now, I think she's even more beautiful than at the time when we did Heat and Dust.
I must just consider her to be always there. I said thank you, demurely. Actually, her being there is the only difficult thing.
It was difficult to cast that role, and I met a lot of girls in London, young actresses, who none of them seemed really good enough somehow. And the time was coming that we had to go back to India, hopefully with that part cast, so we could really start planning. And then an agent told me about a girl that she thought might be right, and it was Greta.
Jim told her, "You will play the grandmother." So she hadn't read the script or the book or anything. So
imagine someone at 23 is going to be.
But you know, you're very eager at 23 for any part. So grandmother, all right, I'll try. And then Greta came to meet us, and she just was superb. I mean, she, in appearance, she was about 23 then, and you know, tall and extraordinary looking, and she spoke very well, and she was well trained. She had been to a proper dramatic school in England, so she was an experienced young actress, and so just on the spot we cast her.
And you know, just about a week before our shooting, actually, because we already had Julie Christie and everyone else, and then Greta's part was cast a week before we left for India.
Shashi is a prince, so I have to take that into account and try and tone him down a bit. But he's always played princes in our movies, except in The Householder. The Householder was the only one there. He wasn't some sort of grand, rich figure. He plays a rich playboy in Shakespeare Walla, And then when we did Bombay Talkie, he's a movie star, you know, at the height of his looks and career and everything. And then when we go on to do Heat and Dust, he's a Nawab. So he's always played those kinds of parts. I mean, he was really put on this earth to play those kinds of parts, I think. And the lucky thing with Shashi was that he had a kind of classical training that had come from two different areas. One from his own father's theater company, which is called Prithvi Theaters. And his father was a very, very famous actor and actor-director. And they had a theater company. And then he also was in the Shakespeareana troupe of Shakespeare-Walla and played parts like Mercutio and types like that, and so had a kind of classical training in Shakespeare at least, and in, you know, other sort of serious plays. So he had a kind of background that he could draw on as a young actor, that most young actors, most young Indian actors or from the Bombay film world certainly don't have. And he also spoke English very well.
So this is how you spend your time, you idle fellow, playing cards with women.
I'm not playing anymore. I've never seen such abominable cheating.
And then, of course, Madhur Jaffrey, who had played this very haughty, spoiled movie star in Shakespeare-Walla and was a lover of Shashi Kapoor. So when we were going to cast Heat and Dust and she was to play the Begum, Jim didn't want...
No, wait a minute.
Wait, yes.
No, let me come in here. She asked me whether she could play that part. She'd read the script and she just wanted to play that part, the part being the Nawab's mother, Shashi Kapoor's mother. And I thought, well, this is impossible because she's about the same age as Shashi. How can I possibly do that? And I had sort of feelings of being sort of gallant and not allowing her to play an old woman. Well, she twisted my arm, and I'm awfully glad she did because I think she was incredibly good in that.
But we all did too.
Yes,
we convinced you to have her as the Begum, you know, and Jennifer on one side, myself, Ruth, we all sort of, you know, said that, you know, no, she can do it, you know, because she just has this marvelous quality.
Well, I knew that, but I wasn't, I guess I wasn't seeing her somehow in the part because, she, as I say, she was virtually the same age as Shashi, so it was hard for me to imagine her doing it. But
Jim,
anyway,
many a times casting,
well, that's the way.
You know, it has to be, you know, understood that sometimes, of course, the director has a greater insight and all, but it is the producer's eye that is important.
Y tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
Like James Mason,
sometimes with, you know, you can get away with it on the stage, making up an actress to look older, or an actor even, to make them look older, but it's very hard in films to do that in a convincing way, and I just was sure she'd never manage. But then they gave her this amazing sort of hennaed wig to wear. Oh, she was great.
But it was amazing because the costume, again, you're talking about creating an atmosphere and getting all those women in the zanana, you know, where the ladies, you know, congregate, and to get the costumes right for that. And we were so lucky because the people who were in Hyderabad, the royal family and their, you know, relations and all, they had these marvelous costumes and jewelry, you know, which was loaned to us. I mean, if a producer was to go and, you know, you were to create that would cost you as much as it costs us to make the film. And I think we would not be able to create or make the scene so rich unless it would be the generosity of the people who are, you know, helping us, you know, all along, you know, in these years.
That particular film was a kind of coming together of the East and West. And like so many stories of the East and West, the mixture does not always work successfully. The love story is very bittersweet. It's an unhappy coming together of men and women. We wanted the same kind of conflict to be apparent in the music as what was happening in the drama.
Oh, it's all out of tune.
Heat and Dust was a wonderful project in that I had a first opportunity to work with Zakir Hussain, the tabla player of great renown, and someone with whom I've worked on several other projects over the years, but that was my first experience with him, and he is really one of the great maestros. It was a double good fortune in that he plays a character in the film, one of the love interests of the Julie Christie character.
If I were asked again to do a novel of my own, I would say, please no. I'd really rather not do it, because you've been over this material once before. But here also there was, I think, an eight-year gap, was it? How long?
Yes.
The book came out in 75 and the film, and
81.
so it was quite a long gap in between. But still, you know, I felt I had actually moved on. I was writing other kind of things. So it was like turning back a little bit.
The only kind of backlash we ever had with that film was when it was seen by certain kinds of very conservative Indians who were appalled at the shot, for instance, of the British couple lying naked in the bed, this kind of thing, and how could such a thing be shown on television where your family could see it. There was that kind of thing, but nothing really about either Olivia having an abortion or Anne deciding to have a baby fathered by her landlord. I mean, no one ever said anything that I know of.
And I know that there was a bird, a most beautiful bird that comes and sings, you know, in Kashmir at the time. So when we were doing the scene, this bird arrived from nowhere, you know, from heaven, I would say, and started to sing. And all the Kashmiris who were working with us, they said, oh my God, this is an incredible luck, you know, you have. This film is going to be a huge success. So we said, oh, how nice, you know. And that bird was singing away, and it turned out to be, it was one of our most successful films. You know. It ran for 11 months in London in the cinema, and all over, and Europe, and all in places where we never had our film shown. This was the one that was the first one to be shown.